You guys ready? Good. All right. Hello, and welcome to the Webster Public Library. I am Jenny Paxson, and I am the Reader's Discovery Librarian here at the Webster Library. I also do all of our disability awareness type programs for caregivers, and we do our Special Needs Parent Resource Fair. Our next one is coming up on April 19th. We're very excited. Hopefully we'll have a lot of different organizations and resources for people. And we do this wonderful Diverse Abilities Dialogues panel program, and we have wonderful partners. But luckily to have Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County. And this is unfortunately our last kind of like collaboration with Challenger Miracle Field. Hopefully we'll partner with them again in the future, but we're going to be, me and Kim and Britt and all of our people from Parents Helping Parents will keep this going on for a while, forever, hopefully. And a little bit about me, besides that I'm the librarian here for Adult Services Fiction. I have 2 children with developmental disabilities, and having other families like Kim from Parents Helping Parents and being able to connect on that, we've made these great panels, and if it wasn't for other organizations like hers and the ones we have here on this panel, I don't know what I would do. So I'm going to let Kim talk a little bit about Parents Helping Parents. Here you go.
Thank you. I'm Kim Dewar. I'm the Vice President of Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County. We are a nonprofit started by 3 special moms who are now best friends and coworkers. It's the best situation ever. We started with a vision to help children and families receiving or waiting for early intervention and preschool special ed services, so the 0 to 5 age group. And now we really just help all children and families and children who are now adults. We put on free purposeful programming monthly. We do every other month in-person play dates where we have volunteer providers from Step by Step come and answer families' questions about their child's development. And then we have on the off months online webinars of various topics, and I have already coordinated our next webinar, hopefully, with some of the folks on our panel today. We also do local and state level advocacy for more funding. Funding. It's all about the money. We need that money to service these folks. So we will never stop doing that, but we have wonderful collaborations like with Jenny at the library, putting on these wonderful diverse abilities dialogues. And we also do a support group for siblings of kids with special needs, and I run that, and it's actually tonight. It's always at the Webster Rec Center on the first Tuesdays of the month, 5:30 to 7 p.m. Am I forgetting anything? Beth Kaneko has been our partner from Challenger all this time, and we're sad to have her move on to something else, but it's really exciting for her, and we hope this collaboration, it will last forever. Our lives don't change. This is a forever life. So thank you guys so much for being here and sharing these resources with families. Our goal is to just raise public awareness about what is out there for people instead of just having families feel like they're drowning. So we were drowning once, and we don't want people to feel that way. So this is why we do it. So thanks for being here. Oh, sorry, I have 4 children, two of which have developmental disabilities. You're probably like, how did she get into this? That is why. I'm inspired by them every day. And one's here, Caius, my littlest. His birthday is on Friday, 4 years old. Happy birthday, Kai Kai.
Happy birthday. So thank you all for being here. Usually we start the panel with talking about who you are, like what you do for what your organization does, and what services you provide, and then what your role is in your organization. So if you could get started, we can move on down the panel.
Hi, my name is Amy Albanese. I'm the Community Relations Manager with Person-Centered Services Health Home Care Coordination Organization, and we provide health home care coordination for people of all ages in 18 counties and help link and refer to different supports and services in the community. And with my role, I help educate providers and families about care coordination and help link to our intake department for free assistance applying for Office for People with Developmental Disabilities eligibility and Medicaid if needed with the goal of enrollment.
And my name is Caitlin Luke Moore. I'm the Provider Relations Manager with Person-Centered Services. So Amy covered everything PCS does, and in my role, I work on the relationships and collaborations with the OPWDD agencies that we work with, as well as a lot of the community-based resources, so that we can make sure that our care coordinators are well equipped to help their families and people they support get access to those services.
Hi, I'm Jane Stamler. I am the Community Outreach Specialist for Prime Care Coordination. We are the other option in the area for OPWDD's care coordination. We provide linkage and referral services for adults and children as well with intellectual and developmental disabilities. When somebody reaches out to us, we can help from the beginning stages of eligibility all the way up through getting a care manager. And again, that care manager would link them with different supports and services in their communities. We are in 39 counties across New York State. So my role is to educate people on what care coordination is, what Prime Care is, what we do, how we can help support, and basically answer any questions about the process from A to Z. And I'm going to turn it over to Gamze.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Gamze Venable. I'm the Student Family Education Specialist for Prime Care Coordination. What makes us different is that this position is, I think, very specific to prime care. We want to make sure that our parents are feeling the support in educational settings and they don't look for outside resources. If they do, that's perfectly fine. We want to lead them to the right direction as well. So in my role, I support individuals from, the moment they walk into prime care. We just had an individual who needed support at one of the CSE meetings, just in the new enrollment process. So they don't even have a care manager, they don't have the full Medicaid eligibility, whatever the case may be, but we are there. We will guide them, we will help them. And I did attend one of the meetings of this individual, which, was very helpful for the family. Not only just attending the, CSC meetings, it could be looking at the IEP, it could be giving them guidance on behavior support services, it could be connecting them with a tutoring service, it could be looking at the evaluations results and having them just making them that, they have the opportunity to have that better understanding of the IEP. They can ask those questions. There are so many things we do in the educational field that we can support our families with. Just a little bit about me. I am from Webster. I have 2 children that are with developmental disabilities. They are receiving services through Prime Care Coordination. We love Prime Care. And I always say, when the families, the community, the school, library, everybody gets together and they work together and there's inclusion, there's nothing our kids, our adults cannot accomplish, right? And that's a big example when I go back to think about my daughter. We had a very rough, challenging start, and when she was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, and we weren't even aware of the genetic conditions, whatever the case may be, and it was just so hard to see what was going to happen. It was tough to think about, okay, how is she going to handle things when she's 11? Now I look at her and I'm like, you just grown so much, you're doing so well. I feel so supported, and I'm very appreciative of the support that we've received from all these people that are, sitting across me, the Heritage Christian Service and the Prime Care Coordination, the school district, the library, all of it. So we're here. We are here for you, and we are here for any questions, not just only for education, but also for care management. So, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Annalisa Evans. I am from Heritage Christian Services. At Heritage, we provide a variety of services between residential and employment. I'm particularly a part of the the community support services, so we're overseeing the fiscal intermediaries. I am an associate director, one part of a huge team at Heritage, and we work with, we oversee the self-directed budgets and the FIs and that sort of thing. Thank you for having me.
Hi, guys. I am Jessica Wild. I am an Associate Vice President for People Inc. We are a organization that serves people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Now we're getting a little bit more into affordable housing, senior services. We're not as prevalent in Rochester. We're trying. Right now, I oversee afternoon respite programs. So in Buffalo, we do have a program for 5 to 10. We don't here. Most of our programs are ages 10 to 21. So we can link for some of those things. I did bring flyers. And we provide after-school respite for parents. So obviously parents need to work. So we are able to provide those services when, kids are out of school. Those 2 weeks between summer and summer school is big. It's important. So we're able to provide full days. Families can come in, drop their kids off on the way to work. And we have 2 programs right now. One is in Gates, and the other one is in the city of Rochester at the Golisano Autism Center. No, I just want to say we need you in Rochester.
It was a comment, not a question.
So I was just I realized as we were going through the panel that maybe not everybody knows what care coordination is and what some of these words are that we might be talking about through the panel. Does anybody want to take that and
I'll take it.
okay.
So I've been with PCS for about 6 years. I was a care coordinator, and then I was a part of the ambassadors, which is like the learning and development side. And then I was a care coordination supervisor before coming over here. So the way that I explain care coordination is it's kind of like the gatekeepers almost to a lot of those OPWDD services, because in order to access them,
OPWDD?
Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. So what the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities is they kind of oversee all of our services, which are called waiver services. If you're going through the process, you're going to hear the word waiver quite frequently. They're going to say, are you a part of the waiver? Do you have access to the waiver? All that good stuff. So that's where a lot of our intake team comes in, because our intake team walks people through that entire onboarding process. They start with an intake care coordinator who helps you get eligibility. They explain the services to you. They explain what you may be eligible for depending on diagnoses or age groups or family support services. So they really make the transition from your intake care coordinator to your permanent care coordinator nice and smooth. And then once you have your care coordinator, that person acts as the center of all of your services. So you will communicate with your care coordinator at the very least monthly, more if you have other stuff going on. But the care coordinator is going to be the one to walk you through the application process for services. They're going to educate you further on the services that you have access to. They're going to help you apply for reimbursement. They're going to, depending on your age brackets, help you set up transportation, give you access to doctors in your area, communicate and collaborate with your schools to kind of help advocate on those things. A lot of our care coordinators attend IEPs and 504 meetings, and we kind of help advocate. And if we don't have those resources, or the care coordinator, maybe that's not their wheelhouse, we're going to get you to the person that can, and we're going to work with a lot of the agencies that have those supports and services. So the care coordinator is your biggest supporter through all of this. They're your advocate, they're your supporter, they're your contact. And if your care coordinator needs additional support, we have a very accessible leadership team. So pull in the supervisor, pull in the director. It's all about the person, and the care coordinator is at the center of that with their team. So.
And Prime Care is the other option for that. And so, like she said, care coordination is really the linkage to different supports and services. And probably the biggest difference when the care coordination organizations were formed in 2018 is I was a care manager back before MSC when it was something called CMCM, back many, many years ago. We really focus mostly on those waiver services. Now, like she mentioned, it's really the whole person. Mm-hmm. It's coordinating with doctors, mental health, physical health, emotional health, all of behavior supports, all of those things. So, when somebody calls our 844 number, they get an intake person. They speak to Sylvia, and then she, kind of pretty much the same thing after, they'll get an intake person, they'll help with that Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, OPWDD, and help with that process, and then it's kind of a warm handoff to the care management team. And just one thing, as you mentioned, what is OPWDD? Always make sure that you ask somebody to explain the acronyms.
Yes.
That we tend to talk in ABCs a lot. And I have been doing this for a lot of years. But once in a while, there's an acronym that I am not aware of, and I've got to put my hand up and say, hey.
Because they make new ones.
They do make new
all
ones.
the
They
time.
change them. I left the field for a few years and came back, and it wasn't Liftline anymore. It was this. It was something different before OPW. I came back to the OPWDD world, and I had left in a different world. So just always be sure that you're asking. But basically, care management, care coordination should be helping you link to different supports and services in the community. And the person, they're just one of those people on those cogs of that wheel, with a person in the center and everybody else in that circle of support around them.
And it's the care coordinator's job to stay educated on those acronyms and
Yes.
things like that. So
Yes.
if you ever are lost in that, then the care coordinator can help guide you.
You have a question?
For Monroe County Care is only prime people, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
A prime person.
Person.
Yep. Nope.
Okay.
That's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And each county has at least 2 organizations. We support some counties that have up to 3. If you get downstate more, we pretty much cover the whole state from western New York through to the capital region up into the Mohawk, what we call the Mohawk area, the Adirondacks. Downstate, I think, has 3, 4, some even have 5, I want to
Yeah,
say. Maybe
like
4,
Life
4.
Plan,
But some of them
ACA,
some of them
Yeah.
have merged, but yes, here we are the only 2 options.
So in your 2 organizations over here, Heritage, how does that kind of play into the system? And also, Annalise, like, you said FI, and like, kind of explain some of those like terms that people might not be familiar with too.
So in regards to care management, obviously, well, maybe not obviously to everybody, but we need the care managers to link and refer those families to our services. So it's going to be a lot of work on the care managers, and to bring in those referrals so we can start the self-direction services with those families. As far as like, I'm sorry? Yep, so self-direction is, it's a program that is part of OPWDD waiver, they were talking about, and it really is. The HCBS waiver.
And what does HCBS stand for?
Home and community-based services. A lot of alphabet soup like they were talking about, but, as far as self-direction, again, we kind of work hand in hand with the care managers in kind of figuring out what services are going to be the most appropriate for the loved one. It gets a little more technical because there's money involved, there's different amounts of money that each individual can get that's based off what is called their DDP-2 score, or their Developmental Disabilities Profile 2 score. It's a big questionnaire that the care managers ask about daily living skills, medical appointments, those types of things. And I like to say the program does its magic and it spits out a bunch of numbers based off of those answers that the DDP-2 has provided. And then it'll determine the amount of money an individual is able to get through their self-directed budget. With that budget, they can use it for classes in the community, something that they may not have ever thought that they could ever participate. Well, now is your chance. So
Everybody
let's
always
do
wanted
it.
horseback riding lessons.
Yes, horseback riding is huge. Art classes are huge. I've seen photography. There's also equipment. Maybe there's a specific type of equipment that's needed that other funding streams may not be able to to purchase for the individual so they can check out the budget and maybe it's something that we can cover through the budget. And then the FI, or the fiscal intermediary coordinator, that's what we do, is we are, I guess, the overseers of the budget. So we make sure that the money is being spent appropriately, that it's being allocated to the different funds wherever it needs to go. Again, working hand in hand with care management to determine what's needed for the individual. So there's a lot more, but.
And like everything, the care manager is so integral to that, because when you're filling out that DDP2, that developmental disabilities profile too, OPWDD actually told me once, Office for People with Developmental Disabilities told me once, fill it out desert island alone without any supports around. And that, again, because that's what that algorithm spits out, the budget is dependent upon the severity of the disability. So the care manager really needs to walk you through that and know it very well, know that process very well. But you want to be sure that you're getting everything that you need.
So we definitely work hand in hand as well with care coordination. Part of what we've been doing recently is really trying to reach out and let care coordinators know that we do exist, because it kind of works both ways. There's times that, there's such a high turnover rate with care coordination for sure, that sometimes families don't know we exist. So we've been trying to do a lot of outreach with those kind of things. We also provide self-directed services. We do have fiscal intermediaries. We have in-home behavior supports as well. We have PAB programs. We have some group homes out in the area. And then I also oversee a family care program. So family care would be, somebody can turn their home into a congregate level care home, and then they certify their home, and say you have a cousin that wants to move in with you and not into a group home. You can certify your home, and then that person can live with you and receive supports and services. So there's a lot of things we actually have right now in process. A grandmother that's taking in her grandson to take care of him. So there's a lot of pieces to care coordination, obviously. I feel like they're the key to us. If someone is interested in respite, in-home services, anything like that, the care coordinators apply. They submit an application to us, and then that's kind of where I feel like we always kind of work together. So we work with you guys, you work with us, and really it's just working together as a team, coordinating that care for whether it's a child, adult, the family needing services, and kind of working together as a team.
And something to kind of point out is that Heritage People Inc. are here, and they're two of the great agencies, and there's also lots of agencies in the Rochester area, and a lot of families don't know about these agencies. So
Can you name them, please?
you want me to? I can list a lot of them. So there's the Arc of Monroe. There's some Arc of Glow touches this area, which is Genesee, Livingston, Orleans, and Wyoming.
Yeah.
Arc of Ontario, there is Empowering People's Independence, known as EPI, People Inc. Heritage, Lifetime CDS Monarch, CP Rochester, Urban League, which just kind of went through a different transition, but they're still available. And then there's all of the community support services as well that are outside of that Office of People with Developmental Disability umbrella. So it's the care coordinator's job to take a lot of that stress and alleviation off of families. It shouldn't be your guys' responsibility to know and be able to recite every single agency in the area. If you can, I would love to offer you a job. But something about that too is, in my role as the provider relations manager, I'm reaching out to these agencies and building these relationships and these collaborations so this information gets to the care coordinators so they can also kind of choose what to bring to the families based off of previous conversations. There's a lot of work with the family to figure out what do you guys want, what's going to be best for you so that they can kind of narrow down the best choices while also letting you know that everything is available.
And that's really what it's all about, is that collaboration with things like the Webster Library and just making sure that we all know about each other. Doing this for so many years, I'm almost convinced there's enough resources out there. We just don't talk enough. We don't do things like this enough. We don't get together enough. And We just need to be doing more of this, and people need to ask questions. But we had this conversation before we started. Sometimes you don't know what questions to ask. And that is where the care, again, a care manager should really be a key to that, helping you ask the questions, giving you, not so much running the show, but just making sure that you're asking the right questions to people.
And something unique that Person-Centered Services has available for families and providers is our community resource tool. And so that has over 3,000, I think we're over 3,000, right?
Yep.
Organizations and services in there that care coordinators, families, providers, it's on our website and accessible, and it's a partnership with 2 other organizations, so it's statewide. So that's something we've really taken on internally, is collaborating with those other agencies and getting this resource tool that's, you know, kept up to date. So we do have a flyer on the back table, and we can get an electronic flyer shared as well.
Yep.
You're right, we do need to be talking more, so please come to our mixer before the Special Needs Resource Fair, because the organizations are going to have a chance to chat with each other before or after? Before the resource fair starts. So good point there. So just to clarify for the folks at home, Person-Centered Services and Prime Care are the 2 care coordination companies for Monroe County.
Yep.
Correct. And the
You
surrounding
service, in the surrounding counties, you service families and provide them 2 resources such as Heritage Christian, People Inc., and many others that you just listed. I think Starbridge wasn't listed, but yes, I wanted to shout out to Starbridge. My question is, in the very beginning, when you are starting to get this Office of People with Developmental Disabilities qualification, is it necessary to have a diagnosis, or can a child or adult receive services just based on a disability profile?
I can take that one. So there's 2 different types of eligibility. There's provisional eligibility, which is birth to 8, and then there's permanent eligibility, 8 on. So for provisional eligibility, you don't have to have a formal diagnosis, but there's still criteria based on testing that you have to fall within that range. So it's very similar to qualifying for preschool special education services. So even, you know, once they're in kindergarten and first grade, they can still meet that criteria without a formal diagnosis. But then you do have to have a formal diagnosis for permanent eligibility. So it is really important to be aware of that for the different ranges. A lot of the families who come to our intake department who are under the age of 8 typically have a formal diagnosis, or they're falling within that intellectual disability range. And then there also has to be substantial handicap on both sides, which looks at social communication and daily living skills. And so those are assessments, they're typically adaptive assessments, they're violence that schools are helping complete. So it has to be diagnosis and substantial handicap that need to combine in order for that eligibility. And once enrolled, if you have provisional and you're transitioning to permanent, the care coordinator and care manager are responsible for assisting with reapplying for permanent eligibility.
And when you call when you call the number, the eligibility enrollment team helps gather that documentation that you need. They will walk you through. I used the word literal until somebody down in the southern tier, a high school student, corrected me and told me that we didn't literally hold people's hand. She was right. But, you know, we really hold somebody's hand to make sure that they have all those documents, you know, to be able to present it. It is a path that you can walk yourself, but it is doing eligibility in the past for individuals. It's complicated, it's confusing, and it just helps to have somebody along for that ride that really is invested in and knows.
And something to also point to is if you are at that provisional to permanent transition, and for whatever reason you do not maintain permanent eligibility, we also do assist with a transition into a different health home that's not under the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities waiver. And we also provide education on that, because I know for a lot of families that I worked with that had little kiddos that were in that transitionary stage, it was terrifying to them to think about losing services, or, you know, it's a lot of unknown. I have to do this again. I have to have this conversation again. So our care coordinators and our support teams really do help families through that transition in the event they do not receive permanent eligibility. So it's not just another void. We do try to do our best to get them linked to another health home or another option for them that can still fit their needs.
And if families are denied, you can always come back at any
Appeal.
point in time to reapply and reconnect with the agency you were working with, as long as there's new information. So let's say you got a new diagnosis at age 9 and you were denied for permanent eligibility at age 8, you can come back with your new diagnosis paperwork, and just the new documentation will need to be submitted, so not all of that information won't need to be gathered again. And there are two big differences with the two agencies on how to connect. So, Prime Care can speak to that, but with person-centered services, I collaborate with a lot of school professionals and trained providers to be able to assist families with our intake referral packet to directly streamline, link them to an intake specialist. They can also reach out and get support from myself, and I can provide my contact information, and I do family case consultations and referral packet assistance. We also have ways to link through a 2-page referral form, and a referral specialist will reach out instead of the family reaching out to us, or families can call. So we kind of have 4 streamlined options in the ways to access our intake department.
So how do families afford services? It sounds like you do a lot of different things, and I assume it's not free. I'm playing dumb here. I know how you're funded. But, and that goes for all of your services as well. So how does that play out with care coordination and FIs, brokers, and the things that People Inc. does, like housing, respite, and that? How are these programs funded?
They're all
Medicaid,
Yeah,
Medicaid, yep.
So a person has to qualify for Medicaid before they can get services through care coordination?
Yeah,
They
and that's
do, but-
something that that
Yep.
both teams
Yep.
will help them with.
And
Will help
then
them
for kiddos, in certain instances, a question that we have is, well, if a family isn't going to qualify for Medicaid, there are options, which is known as parental deeming, where things get waived in order for the children to have access to Medicaid. Now, if they lost their eligibility with OPWDD services, they would also lose the Medicaid. And they have that Medicaid because of the, I'll say it again, waiver, the HCBS waiver. But yes, we are 100% Medicaid funded.
So if it's a new family coming to the intake team, it's eligibility, waiver approval, Medicaid enrollment. And if it's a family coming to us who already has Medicaid, it would go eligibility and then enrollment. So you have 2 additional steps for non-Medicaid families where they first have to get approved for a waiver service in order to receive that parental deeming to waive income, which would then be able to be secondary insurance for that family, but just for that child based on disability, not income. But like Caitlin said, if they were to lose the eligibility, they would lose the Medicaid as well. And our care managers help families keep and maintain that eligibility throughout care coordination.
Yep.
And Amy spoke to the little bit of a difference in the enrollment process with us. We have an 844-347-3168. I've got brochures here and my cards that have it on it, and it's on our website. But with us, you call and you talk to Sylvia. Sylvia answers the phone, takes a little bit of demographic information, and then it is transferred over to the intake team who connects with you. And then they start the paperwork process with you. I am available as well to go out and talk to people and kind of let them know, kind of things, dialogues like this, let them know what the process might look like for them, to kind of educate, because again, like we were talking, they don't know what questions to ask. It's so easy to just say, well, just ask questions. But when you're dealing with trying to put food on the table and, the loss of something, and you can't even think about what questions to ask. You might have 2 or 3, 4 or 5 kiddos, and so we with us just call the number and then speak to somebody and then start through the process, figuratively holding your hand.
Yes. And People Inc. and Heritage, your funding is through Medicaid as well then?
Yes, yes. So for respite, we talked a little bit about self-direction. If someone does go self-directed, then they would have to put us into their budget. If they're not self-directed, the care coordinators either way would submit a request for service authorization, and then they would get kind of a base number of units for that person. And then if it was somebody that was self-directed, some people have self-direction workers that work with them, so maybe a family friend or someone like that. So they would have to kind of budget for us and what other services they were going to use.
The parental respite, is that paid through the budget, or is that paid through, how is that funded? I thought you
The
said.
family care, like the home.
Is that what you said was parental? I thought you said something about parental respite.
After school respite?
maybe that,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, so that one would be through the waiver-based program. So they would have like,
Okay.
the approval through a waiver, or they would use their self-directed services and put us in their budget.
Can I just clarify something very quick? So I think the question came up regarding diagnosis. I want to make sure the parents can look it up as well on OPWDD website. I was just actually training somebody yesterday, one of the parents, and going through this. So, and there were a lot of questions about, okay, you know, the test results show IQ this level, but the adaptive skills were so low. Do I still qualify? Yeah, so I can't make that determination, none of us, but OPWDD requires anybody to qualify for services to have developmental disability. That is the rule, number one rule. You have to have a developmental disability to able to qualify any kind of waiver services. And if parents wonder, okay, is my child eligible? You know, is my sister eligible? My suggestion is to go on the website, OPWDD, and or Google qualifying diagnosis of OPWDD services, and it will list. And I'll just give a quick, a list like autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disabilities, it could be Down syndrome, and it could be something that combined of other diagnoses, but this is going to be the biggest draw to get into the door for the services. I just want to make sure that the parents knew.
We have a lot of folks, especially in the 0 to 5 age group, that are awaiting diagnoses because the waiting list to get a developmental assessment is,
Right.
for my personal experience, was over a year long. So would that type of child who, I guess, at that stage would just be globally delayed, let's say, would they be able to qualify in that transitional aspect?
Potentially, yeah, depending on, the other factors. Because somebody could have that diagnosis, but if their IQ and their adaptive doesn't align or things of that nature. So I feel like we're both really careful when we're talking about yes, that diagnosis qualifies, because we never want to mislead, because there's always something else. This is, the state, it's lots of digging. That is a very common diagnosis, though, I would say, for the younger kiddos that come in for
We
pre-eligibility.
typically don't, at least I typically don't recommend families connect with us until like 3 months prior to exiting early intervention, because we don't usually enroll children while they're in early intervention, because it can be a duplicate billing type of situation. So I usually say 3 and up, but going back to that provisional, if they qualify for preschool special education, then they're most likely, I can't guarantee it, but they're most likely going to qualify for provisional eligibility. It's just we're running into a lot of difficulty getting those younger children the waiver to get the Medicaid. But at minimum, anybody who qualifies can access family support services. So if maybe, unfortunately, there isn't waiver approval at this point in their journey, and they have the eligibility, they can still access family support services, which includes family reimbursement up to $3,000 per eligible child who lives at home. And then there's also a ton of different services through family support as well. So there's a whole directory for the Eastern and the Western, I think they call it Finger Lakes. So we have access to provide those to families as well. So when I have families who call me between like 3 and 5, if they had qualified for preschool special education, I'd say let's try at minimum to get you provisional eligibility. Can't guarantee your success with waiver and Medicaid, but you can at least come to us to try to get family support services and then go from there.
So if family support services is not a waiver,
No.
it is not Medicaid, who pays for that?
They're grant-funded services. The agencies have to apply for the grants to OPWDD.
Okay, so is it safe to say that if you are approved for a waiver of any sort, that you are approved for Medicaid?
Most likely. I mean, they still have to take the steps to apply to the county and then go through a state disability review process, but it's more likely than not that if you are approved for the waiver, you've got the parental deeming, you're most likely, I just can't guarantee it, going to receive that Medicaid. It's just each county has a different time frame and working with the state to approve that.
And with the Medicaid, I know a lot of families have questions about, is Medicaid now their health insurance as well? Is it a secondary insurance, or is it just something that's covering these services?
Secondary, so they can bring it to doctor's appointments as secondary insurance.
And it pays for
Correct.
the
Yep.
services?
It's the primary point is to pay for care coordination and OPWD services and supports. But there's also linkage to a lot of non-OPWD services and supports, like where they still might need insurance, but they might not need the Medicaid per se, like doctors, dentists.
Mental health, we see a lot with that.
Therapy, behavioral health specialist, recreation, community-based services, so.
Food therapy, that was
Food
something,
therapy.
yeah, food therapy is one that,
Yeah.
I know there's a different word for it, but yeah, that was something I helped a
So
lot with.
all of the services that the coordinators refer to aren't necessarily going to need the Medicaid at the service provider agency. That's usually more the OPWD agencies that would also need that Medicaid, but they have the Medicaid if enrolled.
I don't want to start a fist fight, but there seems to be some disagreement between the two.
So receiving school services doesn't necessarily qualify you for OPWD services. They will still look at the documentation piece medically. They will still look at the test results, adaptive results. There has been, just as a mother, I have, 2 children, and I went through the process for both of my kids. I'm just being a care manager, being a teacher and the education specialist, all of it together, I've been in this process for so long, and I will refer always the parents, if you're not OPWDD, we will never make that determination, so please go on the website to look for the qualifying diagnosis. When both of my kids were receiving, early intervention or school services through after school district or EI, early intervention, but that doesn't necessarily qualify them for OPWDD. So we still needed those extensive tests and medical doctor visits to be able to get all that package together. And there has been times we work with individuals that may be receiving speech services, or they may be, receiving a service that's not a developmental disability at the school setting, but that doesn't qualify them for OPWDD services because that's specifically for developmental disabilities. So my guidance always to the parents, we will help you if you're eligible, but the first step is to make sure that, if you're eligible or not, and to check that always. OPWDD has a list on their website, and the doctor's office and the enrollment team will be leading you to the right direction, so that, we want to make sure that you have the correct steps to move forward.
If you don't come to the table with the eligibility teams,
Yes,
can
they
help,
can, definitely.
help refer to get that testing done and to bring it to the table. And sometimes, the more you come to the table with, I hope you'd agree, the quicker the process is. But if you come to the table without it, that's what these intake eligibility, no matter what we call them, teams do. And we don't have any magic, where if you come and go through us, we don't have any way to get you on a waiting list quicker, or, it's not that kind of, used to be when you went to a hospital in an ambulance, if you went in an ambulance, you got seen quicker. It's not that kind of a thing, but we certainly are there to help support you and help you find those places that might have a shorter waiting list, or, sometimes parents don't want to be on more than one waiting list or something, and then, a good intake person, a good eligibility person is going to, so let's get on a couple waiting lists, let's see which one pops up first.
Was the parent question, are you referring to the feeling like there's a disagreement between the criteria to qualify?
I'm not sure, it just says, when you said preschool, if you have
Yeah.
preschool special ed.
So, and when you're looking on the website, it is a little tricky, like they might not have it readily available, but so if you go on the website, it looks as though all ages you have to have one of the qualifying diagnoses in substantial handicap, but you got to really search for it, and I do have a document directly from OPWDD regarding provisional eligibility is different. So I feel like OPWDD's website, a lot of their qualifying diagnosis and substantial handicap is related to permanent eligibility. So there is a difference in qualifying for provisional versus permanent. So the permanent qualifying diagnosis and substantial handicap, but to qualify for provisional, it directly relates that you have to have a delay in one of the 5 functional areas, or 33% delay, or 12-month delay. So that's from birth until 8. And so it doesn't explain that very well on the website. So if you look at it, it looks as though any age would have to have the diagnosis, but it is different criteria for provisional eligibility.
So I think the biggest like trend across all of that is there's a lot of different moving pieces. There's a lot of different, well, this, well, this, well, this. So if you are in the process of starting this, or if you feel as if your child may qualify, the best point, I think, would be to have that communication with your supports in school or the doctor's office or wherever you're getting those supports, calling one of our intake departments and saying, I'm not sure, but where do I start? Because as Amy very well just explained, we understand those kind of different moving pieces. We can kind of help put people where they need to go. So all that to say, start a conversation with somebody that knows your child, knows you, knows what's going on, and kind of go from there.
I just wanted to ask down this way and go forward. So, like, what are some common questions that are asked by parents who are starting out, and like, or in general, and also maybe one of those difficult questions, like, what are those kind of questions that that people find really challenging that they need help with? And Jessica, if you wouldn't mind starting down there.
So I think in the beginning, most of the time, obviously, we are getting people from care coordinators, but there are times that we do attend resource fairs where they don't know about the services, they don't realize that they need to go through a front door authorization through OPWDD to then start receiving these services. So there are times that we're referring to care coordinators. Usually that's not the case, but there are times. Parents, for us, a lot of times it's, so we're open Monday through Friday. In Buffalo, we have some rec programs, and they're like, do we need to come every day? My child doesn't want to go. He goes to grandma's on Thursdays, and that's what he likes to do. Do we need to come every day? What? For us, it gets a little tricky because, of course, a family with a child that has some behavioral needs, they do need the services too. But in some of our programs, and depending on the settings and the staffing ratio, which is a big thing, we're not always able to provide those supports for people with such intensive needs. But there also is another part of it where we can apply as an agency for intensive behavioral respite. So some of the other like overnight respites can apply for like a medical intensive also, where they may get it for if someone has like an EpiPen or a medication that they need. And for us, if someone needs, our ratio is typically 4-to-1 for the adult and, teenage programs. So sometimes it's, my child's never been to this before, how are they gonna do, what's gonna happen? And a lot of times for us, I always find the parents come in and say, they're just gonna come 1 or 2 days, and 3 months down the line, they wanna come every day, because they're having so much fun. And a little bit I say is different with respite. So respite, our ultimate goal, even on their life plans, is really to provide a break to family, because we understand that, parents have to work, parents have to run to maybe the grocery store after work. So our programs are open from 2 to 6 p.m. So it's really nice because the school districts, and that's usually the tricky part with us, is school districts. So if your district is where our program is, they're gonna transport. Some districts will not cross lines. Sometimes there's ways to go around that, and a lot of different things. But so we're open, full days longer, but from 2 to 6. And, self-directed is a little different, where you can find someone that's willing to work. I know I had a person recently, their dance teacher was a self-directed worker, family members, things like that. But for us, the piece that I like about respite is that socialization. I mean, we have guys that have been in the program, they're 10 to 21 programs, they're 20 years old now, they're drawing together, they're doing different things together, they have friendships outside of it. So I would say that the tricky part, or where those tough questions is, are you going to be able to serve my child? And a lot of times parents have been told no for so long, or they sit on wait lists for programs that really do not have openings for them. So we do try to be as upfront. Of course, there's going to be, actually the 2 in Rochester do not have a wait list. We are really good with just kind of bringing people in right away. But that's kind of a tough thing sometimes, is we can talk about these services that are available. Your care coordinator can apply, but you very well could sit on a wait list for a little bit of time due to the influx of people that obviously would want the services.
So I think one of the questions that we see most often, which is kind of boggles my mind, but it's actually parents that just get so overwhelmed with self-direction. They don't know what to ask. Again, they don't know what to ask, what kind of services can be covered through the budget, what kind of items can be covered through the budget. And then it gets really frustrating when the parents say, well, I didn't want to bother you, so I didn't want to ask. No, we need you to bother us. That's why we're here. So I think just making sure that the families are comfortable in coming to us, because that's what we do. This is why we're here. We're here for you guys. So, just making sure that the families understand that no question is too big or small, and we are all here to get these services going. Just making sure that they're comfortable with the different computer systems that we use. I know that one of the biggest pains I hear is Evero.
There's support groups now, right? Like
I've
work
heard.
groups.
I forgot to say in the beginning,
Yeah.
Parents Helping Parents, Coalition Monroe County, we put on a Vero sessions with one of our colleagues, Kim Jones, and one is actually this coming Thursday night here at the Webster Public Library. Just a bunch of parents that get together and bang out their to-do list with the Vero reimbursements. So
love
please
that.
come.
Yes, please, yes.
Everything's on the Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County Facebook group.
Yeah, so just, making sure that families are comfortable in coming to us with questions, because we want you guys to be able to utilize this money, do fun things that are outside of the box. Yeah.
Well, I guess when I was a care manager, the most question that I always had to answer right from the beginning when I had a new enrollment or an established case, it's always, what services are available to me? What services can my child receive? Because that what question is always there. And if they don't know it, they won't receive the service. So that's why our rules are very important, and it's crucial for families to access the services. And I will speak as a parent too. I didn't know until I enrolled my daughter in the care management and an OPWDD eligibility process. I didn't know what services were available, and started exploring now one by one with the just help with our circle of support team, our doctor, teacher, our care coordinator, all of it. So it's always parents will come with the question, what is available? And they should ask. If they don't ask, they won't know what's available, and they won't be able to assess what fits the best for the child or the individual, older or younger. Yeah.
And traveling across the state like I do in 39 counties, the parents always have the same questions. Very often I get, and this just really breaks my heart, is, a parent of a 17, 18-year-old, well, I don't think I should really start yet for, another year or so. They're not graduating yet. It's never too early. It's never too early. It's never too early to start thinking about it. It's never too early to start trying for it. They don't know what to ask. They don't know what questions to ask. And that's why these events that we do, that you put on the library, when you get that one-on-one with somebody, where you just start a conversation. You maybe start talking about, I had a brother who had Down syndrome. I start telling my story, and then that turns into something else, and and then all of a sudden you've got this conversation going. So I think the biggest question that I always get is that, when should I start this? And is it too late? Because the diagnosis has to be documented before the age of 22, diagnosed and documented before the age of 22. You can get eligibility after 22, but it's a little bit more difficult. And then just encouraging that open dialogue to just ask any question, just bring it on, and there's no dumb question.
I echo everything everybody just said.
It's hard at the end of the table.
But yeah, I think a lot of the anxiety and the fear and things like that comes just from like a lack of knowing, because there is so much unknown that has to do with this. So I think that things like this are great because it gives people an opportunity to hear direct from source, like some of the tips and tricks, or some of the creating a familiarization with a lot of the language that you'll start to hear. But the same thing when I was a care coordinator, families just didn't know where to start. They didn't know what they were eligible for. They didn't know who was going to accept their child or accept their friend or family member. And something that I always really, really liked to kind of ensure that my cases, my families knew about was that the circle of support you'll hear, the interdisciplinary team, the IDT, is the person's choice. So there's a lot of, I mean, like we need service providers there, we need to have the conversations and things like that. But if somebody wants like their neighbor to be a part of that conversation, or they want their friend to be a part of that, like they want whoever is comfortable. So I really push for that so that they advocate, because it's about them. And sometimes that's all the reminder that we need is like, I'm here for you. So whatever you need, we'll figure it out. But yeah.
Yeah, very similar. The biggest question personally I get in my role is, is my child eligible or where do I start? So a lot of those family case consultation referral phone calls I'll do, and then I send follow-up emails with a lot of resources. So it's information sharing, encouraging families to come to resource fairs like the Webster Public Library. Like I know the two big ones like the Webster Public Library and the Festival of Inclusion bring out most of the providers in our area and have resource guides from those. So I always direct people to those, and just to start getting comfortable and familiar with the different services that are available, like while you're starting the intake process, so you can come in a little more empowered and educated. So I think the resource sharing from the beginning is just really crucial, and I think that's the most challenging part for families. So we really pride ourselves in having those referral phone calls with families and one-on-one support to get streamlined connected.
Between the two care coordinating agencies, does one of you do more with transition age?
We both do the same.
We both do
Yeah.
the same.
We did just host a transition expo, so that's something that our community relations team does
The biggest
annually.
difference is you speak up.
Where we host, my role is to bring in the providers in the area that provide transition to adult services, and get families in front of them. A lot of the school districts showed up, a lot of people from different schools came in to get educated on those services, which is great, because then they go and share that out with their students.
So the role of
But-
the care coordinator is the same
Yep.
of how they're supposed to be supporting under regulations of OPWDD, but our agencies on a bigger, will offer different things, like we offer the Transition Virtual Expo. We're going on our 5th year, I believe next year we'll be hosting it, where it's an opportunity for families and providers to come on to Zoom and go into breakout rooms and meet with agencies like, Heritage and Peopling. And then my team also puts on a quarterly engagement series. So we just did a Access VR. So, we have some differences in offerings, but the core service of care coordination is the same.
And I think the big difference with us is, and you should probably speak to
Yes.
this, the in-house for our care managers and our clinical team have a kind of an expert
Yeah, so we
in-house.
do, when you think about transitions, there's so many transitions, not just, getting permanent eligibility, not just graduating from high school or moving into a job. There's so much transitions that we need to recognize, and care managers will go through the steps with the individual based on what the transition process looks like. It could be the eligibility transition process, it could be the graduation process, it could be transitioning into a new job, it could be just the educational piece where you're transitioning from early intervention. Yes, and then, you're transitioning into CSC, the elementary school, it could be the middle school. So yes, and if the care manager needs the expert information, then they will reach out to the correct person within our agency to get that in-house information.
Because I think when you're talking about the transition from high school to
Yes.
adulthood, as a former care manager, one of my fears always was sending somebody down that wrong path of credentialing versus diploma versus
Right.
this, that. So to have had this position at my fingertips where I could just pick up the phone or send an email
Yes.
is kind of something that we bring to the table.
I just wanted to speak on, I think, something you said where, have your people go to their supports, like their doctors or their educators, to talk about where to start. That's not happening, just so you all at the table know. Families aren't getting those referrals. families don't know anything about anything you just said. Okay? So when they call you for the first time, they truly don't know anything. So please keep that in mind. The folks that we help are completely lost, completely drowning, and they are not getting that guidance from anybody but other parents.
And one of my roles, and I'm pretty sure it's your role too, is to get into doctor's offices, to get into places like that, because my daughter is marrying somebody who is in medical school. 3 weeks of training on IDDD in medical school
Yeah, that's.
at the U of R.
So.
3 weeks.
Something that I'm currently doing with URMC is that, so that's more like the provider side, but I do a quarterly training with all of the pediatric residents. So they all come in and they say, how much do you guys know about developmental disability? How much do you know about OPWDD? How much do you know about this? And their faces are just like, I didn't even know you were here. So something that I've been working with URMC and some of the other different like smaller practices is really getting in with like the residents so that when they're out and they're going to be doing their own practices, they have that education. So starting with the students and then working in collaboration with the nursing staff and the discharge planning teams in the emergency rooms and really trying to push in that education of developmental disability and who we are and knowing who's on their care team. So because it's terrifying.
And
Like,
making their role so much easier.
Yes,
if-
yes,
If
so
they
there's
would
not-
just, it would take so much off of their plate.
Yeah.
If they were, so it's just, again, it's that communication. It's, we
Yeah.
don't talk enough. We don't have enough conversations.
And to your point, that's why, like, I've really worked hard in this role to build a network of resources that are accessible to families. So like after I do calls with families, I'm sending them a follow-up email with 5 attachments, let's say, of different, like what a care coordinator can do for you, what are the OPWD waiver services, different directories from resource fairs like the one at the library here, and just the family support services directory. So, you know, and I hear you, and I love when families call me because I know that they don't. They're calling me for the first time because someone said, here, call Amy. I don't know what I'm calling you about, and just to have that conversation and make sure they can get to the right place and give them that brief education so they're coming in a little knowledgeable, and then just encourage them as you go through the process, you'll learn more and feel more comfortable throughout it. And the OPWD's tutorial videos I think have been really helpful, and our intake team has a tutorial, like short segmented video too. So tons of resources out there, but families don't know about them until they hear about them for the first time. So getting out there and educating is key.
So in respect for everyone's time, I just wanted to say that we are wrapping up, but to what we just discussed, thank you guys for being that first call or that explanation to families, that guidance, because we need you. I feel like we could do 5 panels on the people that are here today, especially the girls on the end. And I say this pretty much every panel, that I like think of myself as being pretty well informed, and I learned so much that I didn't know just hearing, just you on the end there, darling.
I do want to say too, so we have, obviously it's really primarily focused on children with autism, but and adults. We have a partnership with the Golisano Autism Center, and they also have peer navigators and family navigators. So that is that step kind of before care coordination too. And, you know, obviously you have to dig and do some research, but they have been super helpful. I mean, they deal with some adults that are getting diagnosis at an adult age, but those parent and family navigators are able to kind of connect too, and sometimes it's really just looking for those other resources. And the resource fairs are great. Those are definitely a great opportunity.
I encourage us all in the audience and on the panel to keep talking and keep sharing ideas with each other.
And asking questions.
Asking questions. No question is a stupid question. And I am speaking at St. John Fisher this Friday, this Friday, your birthday, to talk to nurse practitioner students about having children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So if you ever need a parent's voice, we will find you parents. Just contact us. I really advocate for parent voices to be at the tables with decision making, and I know you guys all feel the same way. So thank you for being here, supporting us, and we are so glad you were able to share so much resource-rich information for these families we serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's so much
Any
needed.
final thoughts at all from all of the panel just before we end, or you have anything else
I
you'd
mean,
like to say?
I would just say, person-centered services, prime care, I think we're both good. Please call. Just call. I mean, it's, I'd like to say that we were fighting over the last 2 or 3 people that needed supports. But, you know, so just call, connect with somebody, ask your questions, and you can change too from one to the other.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know that. You can, it is just a paperwork switch, it's a phone call, you don't lose any services. Yes, you don't,
Any provider.
Anything.
yes, you don't have to lose any, you don't have to lose your FI, everything could stay the same, so you're right, you could, anything you can.
Your
change.
providers can change at any time. That's why we say all the services will be based on the person's needs and what they want.
Yep.
One thing I always say, talk to me in parents' language, because when you go to a doctor's office, for example, they're talking to you about the heart, and it could be about the brain, and giving all these medical terms, and you're like, okay, what did I just listen? So it's the same. When we talk about all these terms and information, services, laws, regulations, and the parents get confused, and it's scary. I was just talking to somebody yesterday within my family and giving information, and I could hear, oh, this is such overwhelming, this is so long. I said, hold on, I'm going to talk to you now just in, you know, in a language that's going to make much more sense. So we need to talk to our individuals in the way that is going to make sense, and the best way to explain them without making them scared about all these different things that are coming to their way. Because it's not that scary. It's not. And the process may seem so complicated, and it's not, as long as you have the right person to work with. Right.
Everyone,
Thank you.
thank you so
Happy
much.
birthday.
You did so well. You did so
Oh my gosh.
good.